The purpose of this presentation is to work towards ending evil. Some folks may not believe that such a thing is even possible. Well, maybe that's part of the current problem. My aim is to impress you about the value of your time on this planet, to shine a light on the most important truths that have been obscured for too long, to give you the information and knowledge necessary to make true change in the world around us, to move human experience away from suffering and grief towards love and joy. Let's begin to work together towards the end of evil. This presentation is meant to be non-dogmatic, non-religious. I'm not trying to tell you any story that you need to believe. I'm not asking for your faith or any faith-based beliefs or assumptions related to religious texts. Or Preface: who I am. I just want to be really upfront and honest. My name's Chris Jantzen. I've been working most of my life in the skilled trades line of work, carpentry work mainly, maintenance work secondarily. My father was a preacher who studied theology and spirituality. He sparked an interest in me at a very young age, a curiosity and a yearning for knowledge and wisdom, enlightenment. I've always enjoyed puzzles and mentally difficult ones, games involving strategy. I like to use my mind and stretch it out, push it. I have a family of 4. I'm married and I have 2 kids. Currently working in construction as a carpenter foreman, building a house. I'm working on this form of presentation because I feel compelled to share and teach as I would hope others would do in my place if they found themselves realizing the information that I've come across. I'm a philosopher who can't stop asking the big questions, so I've bumped up against all the uncomfortable answers. It would be a lot easier to not share this information. Trust me. I want to give some credit to David Icke. He has a good thing he said regarding responsibility. Accept responsibility for yourself and your actions, thoughts, and words. You alone make choices. You alone are answerable to the consequences of your behavior. The feeble excuse that your boss required it, the establishment expected it, holds no truth or justification. It's David Icke. Good guy to check out. An outline of what is on this presentation. This is part 1 of a larger series. This part 1 is entitled The Preface: Who I Am. The intention of part 1 is to familiarize you with who I am and what I'm trying to accomplish in the larger presentation series I'm going to be creating. The first slide, September 11th, is about my personal experience in relation to that day and that event and how that led me here. The hidden picture is a metaphor that I feel needs to be introduced before the next slide can be presented. The subject of weather manipulation has been a sore point for me, but also, on the positive side, the motivator to do this work. Philosophy, logical fallacies, and the trivium are introduced as a basis or tool set for the work that will be done in the larger presentation. I intend to work on using these tools myself, though I admit I am still a beginner. There may be logical fallacies in my work that I will have to address as I discover them. In order to discover them, I have to do the work first. And the last slide will be Thomas Paine quote, who I find very inspirational. So next slide of September 11th, explosions. This really changed the reality, my reality. It took me some time to it really sink in, probably 10 years, but the result is I came to the conclusion that government is run by untrustworthy folks that don't care about America, morality, or its people. And the sad truth is that the inherent lies in this picture and that were sold to the public show that not enough people care about justice or truth. I could show you countless books, articles, documentaries, websites, all explaining why the disaster that happened on September 11th was a complex plot that was contrived, planned, exactly a conspiracy, yes. And the perpetrators are still at large. I know some of them probably are, but my personal story is that how that became interest to me was when I first got an iPad back in 2012, I believe. And for the first time, I'm looking at this thing like, oh my gosh, I have a crystal ball in front of me. You know, almost any information is accessible. Well, what am I really curious? What is my big question? I thought about it for a couple days and kept coming back this picture in my head of September 11th. And why hasn't anyone raised questions about this? Why hasn't anyone figured out that it obviously wasn't those planes that knocked the buildings down? And I did find a bunch of answers. I found architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth and a bunch of other information. I recommend doing some research about September 11th and understand why I'm angry and why I think it's a spiritual sickness and diseased morality that allowed the perpetrators of this crime to continue to be in power and to exist in this place we live, where they've betrayed us. One simple name we can look into is the Bush family. Their milieu, their crew, still likely holding the reins of power, and no justice has been served. This moment of realization marked my personal journey towards a difficult realization of many deeper truths about what's really going on in our country and in the world, and in ourselves, ultimately.
What are you doing, Willem?
Looking for the hidden picture.
If you stare at these things long enough, you're supposed to see some kind of hidden three-dimensional picture.
Oh, yeah, look, it's a sailboat. You saw it too, damn it!
This next slide, the hidden picture. This is a funny little moment from a movie, Mallrats, as many of you might remember, and where he's trying to see the hidden picture in what we used to call those the magic eye pictures, where there's a 3D embedded picture. If you cross your eyes in such a way, you can see this 3D picture pop out. And to me, it's a perfect example of what this presentation's all about, in that a hidden picture is only hidden if you'll never see it if you're not looking for it. In other words, if you'd been walking through the mall and you just saw a design, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, that design contains a hidden picture. It's not until someone tells you there's a hidden picture in there that it emerges. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because that is the nature of the truth regarding the bigger picture, what's going on in our world, and that I'm talking about. It is a hidden picture type situation, and you necessarily wouldn't have seen it. I didn't see it until someone pointed it out to me, and then I was surprised, like, holy shit. As one day I was looking through the internet, doing more research about September 11th, I stumbled across Dane Wigington runs a site called geoengineeringwatch.org. Someone that lives here in my own state, and he's giving a detailed, well-thought-out documentary about geoengineering that left me really wondering. You know, first I didn't want to believe it. I thought this guy's probably a nut, but I started watching this guy. I started taking pictures, and I started thinking things out. The ramifications of global weather manipulations and biowarfare, and human population getting sprayed like rats without knowing it. The more I read and thought about it, the truth set in. It was too late. You know, it took me a full year plus another year of some doubt and worrying before I felt really confident that this man was correct. This geoengineering, chemtrails, something is going on a large scale. It would have been easier to go crazy. People called me crazy, but the problem is that when you come to a realization like this, it means that everyone else must be a little crazy if they're not seeing this. Like I said, it would be easier for me to just go crazy than have to call everybody else nuts. What I discovered is without our consent, this weather engineering program is going on, and to what extent it's hard to tell. It almost drove me nuts. I felt like everyone hated me for talking about it constantly, but I couldn't get it out of my head. I kept thinking, how can we live like this? But we did. I went to bed and got up another day, and I'm not okay with it, but I don't talk about it all the time like I used to. I'm trying to find an appropriate way to bring up some of these problems in such a way that we can fix them, not just complaining about them. So I feel like it's partly my job to continue to remind people the danger inherent in practices such as spraying particles into the skies with planes. It's not good for humans or nature. And it's one more indicator that there is a large evil going on around us in control. And what that means, we're going to get into a better explanation. Okay, let's talk about philosophy for a minute. My father was a preacher who loved books and talking about the great thinkers. He rubbed off on me. At a young age, I had a deep thirst for wisdom, and I prayed that I could someday become wise. Instead, I just wound up a wise guy. I'm not the specialist or the expert or the authority. I'm just a guy who loves the study of knowledge about the underpinnings of existence. Why do we do these things, and why don't we change? How do we change the world? Well, it must be done first on a deeper level, from the inside out. First, we change our minds, then we change our actions, and then we can affect others. I would say that philosophy is the most important tool that we have to change ourselves, and the only tool that changes internal conflicts or problems. The study of the nature, causes, or principles of reality, knowledge, or values based on logical reasoning, called philosophia, Latin and Greek. I like to look up words quite a bit. That's going to happen a lot in any presentation I do, because part of that hidden picture I was talking about emerges when we look at the meanings of words and how the meaning developed over the years, the etymology, the derivation. And a lot of times looking at a couple definitions next to each other gives us a more 3D picture, in a way, of what a word means. Philosophy, the rational investigation of the truths and principles of being, knowledge, or conduct. A knowledge, a body of knowledge, from Old French. Philosophy or knowledge. Philosophie. Philosophy. Directly from Latin, philosophia, and Greek, philosophia. Philo meaning love, loving, that's philo, and sophia meaning knowledge or wisdom, or sophis, wise. To me, that is such an important fundamental part of this whole thing. The ability to philosophize sets the table for making change in the world. But it starts at philosophy, and then from there it turns into ideas to actually do things, and then actions in the physical world. So if we want to change anything, first we need to deal with the philosophy. And I feel like that's the biggest missing part in things I watch and hear online. And so that's my contribution that I'm going to try to keep bringing up and pounding in. In modern times, our current philosophy is looked upon as a fringe amusement or a side subject, but in fact, it is the thread that forms the fabric of the reality of daily life. Logical fallacies, the art of debate. Besides the love of wisdom, there are some other extremely important tools for thinking: analyzation and dialectical thinking. Deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning are two important tools that aid in research and learning. And the art of debate is sorely missing in today's public opinion. The mockery of true debate that is displayed in modern politics simply ignores logical fallacies, but instead relies on them as ammunition. I'll be working together with you as we continue to offer opportunities for you and myself to make up our own mind on things and develop our own sense of discernment. These tools that I'm sharing now are here to aid in that process. Flawed reasoning leads to fighting rather than learning, because persuasion is in some form of trickery or incomplete thought process. That is kind of the definition that I came up with for logical fallacies. But simple, there's formal and informal logical fallacies, and this is a list of common informal logical fallacies. Many of the current horrors and evils that are practiced in the world are based on lies or truths that are carefully twisted in such a way that people don't notice. There is truth mixed in with a deadly lie. Like how the politicians will sell you on one thing, then slip something else secretly in the bill. There's also an internal problem, as we do make justifications in our own minds to continue being part of committing harm in various ways. By starting to understand the common logical fallacies and being willing to be corrected, we can have a more clear disagreement that reaches a conclusion where both parties are satisfied. Where is this in current popular social forum or media that has an honorable and polite discussion without name-calling and obvious low blows? Now, I myself admit that I need to have much to learn about logical fallacies, so this will be a later topic. But I'm just bringing it up now as an introduction that there's lots of tools we can use to get through difficult material. Way of thinking established in ancient Greece, meaning where three roads meet. And the three roads are made up of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Traditionally, the words used to identify the stages of thinking we would go through in order to find truth. Grammar teaches the mechanics of language to the student. Logic, which is also can be called dialectic, an important word we're going to come across again soon. Logic is the mechanics of thought and analysis, the process of identifying fallacious arguments and statements and systematically removing contradictions. Rhetoric is the application of the language in order to instruct and persuade the listener. So another way to describe the trivium is input, processing, and output, like a computer. Data comes in, data gets processed, and then data is displayed or printed out. Modern schools do not teach the trivium, which is the ancient Greek methodology of the threefold process of gathering information, gaining knowledge through discourse, debate, and discernment of truth, and then application of according wisdom and appropriate action. Trivium can be used to gain mastery. Traditionally, the seven liberal arts were known as the trivium, which is the three roads, which I already talked about, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And then the quadrivium, the four roads, were arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And this picture here on the lower hand left shows how the combination of putting in like a Venn diagram picture, putting these three things together, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, you get true learning and mastery in the center. And the upper left-hand corner shows an ancient picture also explaining that dynamic where truth is in the center. We can start ourselves learning deeper truths by applying this process. And we can work through disagreements with one another applying this process. Part of the logic phase is the dialectic, the argument of different points of view, until we come to the point of being able to speak what sense has been made in the rhetoric stage. I think it seems so often that step 2, the processing stage of the trivium, is just passed right by or skipped over. The processing step. Things on television are being advertised in the modern news cycle. It's fear. Here's the problem, here's the solution. No need to think it over, folks. We'll skip right past the processing stage. You know, the quadrivium, I'd never even heard of that until I came across it listening to podcasts in recent years. These slides here we're looking at were created by Mark Passio, podcaster from whatonearthishappening.com. I highly recommend checking out his website, starting from the beginning of the podcasts. That is, my work here is dedicated to Mark Passio, who exposed me to the information ideas which have so drastically changed my life and perspective. His encouragement and tenacity gave me the courage to bring this work forward to you. Please check out the website, What on Earth is Happening. I also like to give credit to the book written by Jeremy Locke called The End of All Evil. This, much of the ideas and the information to support this presentation are taken from this book. The idea for my title, this book I found out about from Mark Passio, the podcaster I just spoke of. True faith, in my opinion, is the willingness to make a mistake and continue to try again. Being good is living in harmony with natural law, not the laws of man. Not based on written in text, not because it's old, not because a lot of other people believe it. I'm talking about things that are true just because they're true. As was written in the Declaration of Independence, these truths are self-evident. And I just popped that one important little line out of there because in theory, that means that a truth doesn't need to be written down to be a truth. It's self-evident. Obviously, it has been written down, and there it is in one of the most important documents for this country that, we're all shown as children. But we don't often think about what that really means. Quote from Thomas Paine. Freedom had been hunted round the globe. Reason was considered as rebellion. And the slavery of fear had made men afraid to think. But such is the irresistible nature of truth, that all it asks and all it wants is the liberty of appearing.